Hello everybody and welcome to another No Wrong Path. I'm really excited today because I get to interview somebody that I have known for a long time, and I know his career is really interesting. The challenge we have today is that I've known Phil Holwell, who's with me today, for so long that we could get very carried away with what we're talking about and talk about so many things, but we will keep it short and snappy. And you never know, if you want to ask any more questions, you can always connect with both of us on LinkedIn or drop me an email directly, because Phil has a really interesting career. So Phil, thank you for me dragging you into this. We've known each other quite a long time, from quite early in your career. I think we'll admit to knowing each other since 1995, but obviously we are both only still look 21, so that's impossible.
Clearly, we must have met at school or something.
Exactly. So before we get on to talk about you and what you do now, which will be my second question, I wanted to start off about school. And we're interviewing this today on the 13th of August, which is A-level results day in the UK. So I think it's quite a good topic to start about school and how school was for you. Was it a good experience, and did you know what you wanted to do when you left school?
Well, to my parents' great frustration, no, I was fairly normal and didn't really know what I wanted to do, and they didn't really know what I should do, and I think I got some very average careers advice. I liked making things and the way things worked, vehicles, that kind of thing, and okay. I really enjoyed geometry at school and technical drawing. So that's where my interests were.
Right, okay. So you've got an interest, but no that clear path.
Not really. In fact, I had no real idea at that time, and certainly the careers advice that was available was not very good, and so I had no idea what kind of jobs existed where I could do the sort of thing that I was interested in.
Okay. So we're going to jump forward and then we'll go back again. So today, what is your job and what do you do?
So I'm Senior Vice President of Engineering for Perry Formwork Systems here in the US. So I'm responsible for all engineering and technology for the company. Mm-hmm. My role is really to develop the efficiency, the quality and the technology of the engineering group for Perry.
Wow. And what do you have for people who don't know your business, what's your product?
So Perry makes equipment for the concrete construction industry. So we provide the systems that allow you to pour concrete and build bridges, tunnels, high-rise buildings, that kind of thing.
Wow. So did you ever think that's what you would be doing at this point in your career?
No. I think I always knew I loved the way things were built and I wanted to be around that. And yeah. But no, you never quite imagine what it is you'll end up doing.
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because also what's evolving, especially in engineering and technology, is things that are happening today that are at the early stages of innovation, and I think that's quite important when we're in challenging times at the moment in 2020. Officially the UK has just gone into recession, but actually a positive out of that is there's a lot of innovation and R&D that comes out of this, because there's a lot of people thinking about the next generation.
Despite what you might see on the news, the UK is still up in the top few countries in the world for technology and making things and science. So certainly there are great careers to be had, but I would say it's not important to know what you want to do or what you want to be. What's important is knowing what you like and what you're good at and following that. And the only other bit of advice I give is look for the employer, the company or the role. What you become you'll find a way. The path will open in front of you. The main thing is give your employer a lot of opportunities and get started.
So we'll go through a little bit of journey now, because I think it's be really interesting for people to understand how you've got to where you've got to. And because obviously they can clearly hear you are not American, but you are working in the US. And how you're now in a position as a VP. What happened with your career? So where did you start, and what sort of companies have you worked for? Obviously I know the answer to this, but for those people that are out there, I know it's really interesting. That's why I was smiling, because it was like, it's a great story. Where did you start, and who have you worked for, and what type of roles have you had?
Well, it is interesting because you couldn't plan it, but there are these opportunities that come about. I did a degree in engineering, and as part of that degree, I ended up working overseas in Germany for my placement, my internship. Learned the language, and that turned out to be a key to several other steps in my career I'd never expected. So
Wow.
I started working for JCB, and I'd always loved diggers, construction equipment, tractors, that kind of thing. Worked for JCB for several years, and then left JCB to work for Caterpillar. And through working for Caterpillar, who are an American, the largest company in the industry, they're an American company, I ended up working and for some periods of time living in America while I worked for Caterpillar. Then I left Caterpillar after 10 years or so and rejoined JCB, and worked again, traveling all over the place with JCB, until I got an opportunity to leave JCB and join Bombardier.
Mm-hmm.
So I had mid-career real change and took my engineering knowledge and worked for Bombardier train manufacturing in Derby.
Mm-hmm.
Then on to a company called JLG, who make construction equipment, again an American company, and it's through them I was offered the opportunity to come over to the US, and we've lived here for 8 years, working in the US for JLG, and then joining Perry a couple of years ago.
Wow. And I think there's a couple of things that I wanted to pick up on. It's something that you told me in the conversation we had before, was obviously your background is engineering. And there'll be a lot of students that will be listening to this at the moment, and thinking about maths and sciences. But how did you find the maths and sciences at school, Phil?
Oh, I was very average.
You said that it was a challenge, wasn't it?
It was. I found it hard, and I never did really have a moment where it suddenly all became easy. I found it quite difficult, but like a lot of things, they may be difficult, we just keep overcoming them. So I got pretty average results. I struggled with some things, but I got done what I needed to get done to keep moving forward. And people tried to put me off from going into engineering, tried to discourage me because it was going to be tough. There was going to be hard math and physics and so on. But it doesn't work out like that, especially not when you start to enjoy what you're studying, and it's just a means to an end. Now, the day in my second year, I never had another math class. I was over the moon. But that
Big celebrations.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that really struck me, and I didn't know that about you when we were talking to plan this meeting. And I think that's such a valuable insight into somebody who has had a really great career in engineering, design, development, new product development. Two key things: if one, it didn't come easy to you, but you enjoyed it, and the second, that you were discouraged from doing that, but you carried on thinking, no, this is what I wanted to do. Was the people that had influenced you to keep going? Because it would have been very easy, wouldn't it, to have thought, okay, well, people are thinking I'm going to struggle, so I won't take up the challenge.
Yes, there obviously were people who just simply encouraged me. And with your friends, you know, you draw some strength from them. I think I've always been fairly competitive and fairly resilient. But you know, you can become those things if you either know what you really want to do, or you just don't want to let something beat you. But certainly, you know, what you might be given the impression of is you often see the very highest levels of something. But the other thing that's true about certainly careers in science and engineering is there are terrific, interesting jobs at all levels of those businesses. And the main thing about school and getting your basic qualifications and moving forward, and then university, it is just get to the next step to give yourself the options to choose what you do then. So they're almost like a passport to entry. And then when you enter the world of work, you start to realize what you're good at, play to your strengths, try and work on your weaknesses. And companies are made up of people with a full mix of skills and types. And, you know, it would be a pretty boring place and very ineffective if you only had brilliant mathematicians or physicians or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you need a mix of people who've got practical skills, communication skills, you know, all of those things.
Yeah, brilliant. I like that about taking it one step at a time, because I think it can feel very overwhelming, especially, you know, at 18, 20. Well, it can still feel overwhelming when you're in your 30s and 40s, but actually bite-sized chunks to say, I'll get to this place, and if I can get here, that gives me some more options of what I can do.
Yes, I think so. And I think it's still true that A levels are probably one of the toughest points, simply because you're young. The work is pretty hard and fairly fast paced. And from then on, you know, how you work is more at your own discretion, and it's more enjoyable, and you can do it in various ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was not, you know, not the greatest academic achiever, but didn't need to be. Within 5 years of being at work, it really doesn't matter what your exact grades were at school, and it's who you are at the time, how you develop.
So that moves us on nicely to thinking about, it's not just about the qualifications. So the qualifications are important, and there's certain jobs that need that entry level, and that you do need to get those grades. But when you're hiring, so when you've been hired, and also when you hire a lot of people, you're not just thinking about exam grades, are you, when you're looking at somebody's CV or they're looking at your CV? There's a raft of other skills that have been there. What do you think are the skills that have been the most positive for you, that's got you into the jobs that you've wanted to do?
So yeah, I think that's interesting, because if you're looking at two CVs that both graduate engineers or have experience and skill set, you start to look, but what have they done with those things, and what is the individual? So for me, it's been communications and enthusiasm and interest, I think. Mm-hmm. Having accidentally learned the language skills, that's been important for me in my career moves. Mm-hmm. But also, if you're ever interviewing for something, or you want to get onto that next stage, you know, what you're really looking for is somebody that is awake, you know, is thinking about why they're there, what they can do for you, how can they add value. And that comes out very quickly when you're talking to people. So I think I've always been well prepared for interviews. Mm-hmm. Myself, I go beyond just having a look at a website. I get into what is the industry this company's in, who are their competitors, what are their products, what do I think their problems are, and how could what I know help them. Mm. So I think an approach when you're in an interview, and that's what I'm looking for when I interview people too.
Yeah. So that, I'm going to pick that up and just try and give some help to the people that are job seeking at the moment. So on a CV, what's the things that what stands out for you? How do they tell their story and make that so that you carry on reading?
Well, there's some basics, and one of those, you wouldn't believe how many CVs I read where the dates don't add up, or it's not clear what somebody's done, and when they've done it, or there's gaps. So
Yeah,
the first thing is just factual accuracy and completeness.
yeah,
And then when you're looking at what somebody's done, you don't want to know the company that they worked for, the exact job role, and what their responsibilities were. That's generic. What I'm looking for is what were the challenges in that role or in those jobs, and how did you achieve against them? So what were the results?
yeah,
So very much now I expect to see in a CV, my role was this, and the challenges were to solve these problems, develop a new technology, deploy this change, and we did this, or I did this. The result I achieved was that.
yeah,
Um, so that's one thing I look out for also is the word we. On your CV, it should all be just about you and what you did and you achieved, even if it's within a team task. It's very important to be specific.
and is that because people will have the perception that you're using we and they weren't that involved in the project?
They took part, but somebody was telling them what to do. You want to
Yeah.
know what that person learned, not that you're
Hmm.
looking for, the most important person, or that you can't do something as a team. You want to learn about that person and their thinking and approach. And then I'm also looking for what are the other things? What are the things that make them stand out or show their real interest or passion in something? So,
Hmm.
for instance, with a lot of engineering, in fact, I've interviewed people who had very impressive CVs who really couldn't talk about what they'd done or how they would approach something new. And on the flip side, I've interviewed people who didn't really impress on their CV. A lot of the interview was very ordinary, but then when we started talking about what their hobbies and what they do outside of work, and you find they've built a kit car, or they've restored an old classic car, or
Yeah.
they do something like that, that's when you start to put the pieces together and understand who it is you're talking to.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's bringing it alive, isn't it? Bringing that CV to life.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're interested in a career of a certain type, just start doing things in your own time that are associated with that, because not only is it a fun way of learning by doing, not just learning in school or through academia. It makes your purpose come alive. You start to understand what it is you like to do. Is it the thinking and the designing and the problem solving, or is it the physical activity of doing something?
Yeah.
So I encourage a lot of young graduates who can often leave university with a good qualification, but they've never actually physically done anything to do with their course.
Yeah.
I always encourage them to take something and start doing it in their own time and learning about the product or the process or a system.
Perfect. That leads us finally onto our last point. And as I say, we're 2020, A-level results have just come out. And there's going to be people leaving school with their A-levels, people leaving college. There's going to be people that have already graduated, and internships and roles have been pulled from them in the circumstances. What advice would you and I have both seen a few recessions, again, not giving away our age, but 10 years ago there was a lot of people, JCB and Caterpillar at that time, literally it stopped, didn't it? 10 years ago it was the recession really hit that sector. So did you witness what graduates did when you started hiring again, what you were looking for from people, and what advice would you give for people that are graduating or leaving education today to try and secure a role or some work experience, and how can they be different?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question, and recessions will continue to cycle every 7 or so years. It's part of the natural progression. But first of all, I mean, if you're a graduate, you're in a very small percentage of the population in reality, and you're relatively low cost for an employer, with very high potential. So don't be discouraged if you're graduating. There are a lot of roles out there, and a lot of opportunities. But don't be proud, and don't be, not picky, but be selective. So it's more important, for instance, to find a good employer than it is to go for a very specific role.
Yeah.
So good employers will bring you in. They'll see where your talents are and interests are, and your role and what you do will evolve very quickly. Also, opportunities open up very quickly for young people who can be awake. When you get into a job, be looking for opportunities to find out what it is you can do, solve problems. Is there a gap? Fill it. Make your boss's life easy. Be inquiring, and pull the job towards you rather than wait to be pulled through it. And that's easy to say when you've seen it and been through it, and it's not so easy as a graduate to think, oh, I can do that. But that's a big difference. You'll be doing a lot of interviews. So the other piece of advice is work with a recruiter like Ruth, because they can not only help you put a great CV together, make the best of what you've done so far, but they can also see and help you see where your strengths are and how to play to them. Make lots of applications, as I said, and make them to good organizations and companies, or interesting companies. But don't worry too much about what the role or the opportunity might be. Get started. And then you'll find, once you're within an organization, all sorts of opportunities regularly open up. And if you can be interested and if you like, be proactive in showing what you can do and taking things on. So take responsibility and look for accountability before it's offered to you. So that's the other thing. Some people fall into this trap of waiting to be told that they've progressed and they can be promoted, instead of start doing that work now. Ask for more, show what you've learned, go forward, and that will be rewarded and recognized.
And as a hirer, how would you feel about graduates connecting with you directly and messaging you and saying, I'm really interested in your company, not just your, wherever you've been. If there's any opportunity in the future, would you consider me? Can I send you my CV? How does that feel for you? Does that sort of appeal to you, or is it a HR route that they should go through?
I think it can be difficult. That can. There has to be perhaps some reason or real connection to base something like that on. But I also think if you structure that kind of approach very well, and there's a real, there's a specific reason for it. You love that company because, or you recognize that individual, that senior person in an organization for something. Then I think it's fine. I mean, we all are very keen to hear from people who are organized and thinking and awake enough to do that and make that kind of contact.
Yeah.
But certainly, I mean, I have that happen to me lots and lots of times, and when somebody has something that stands out, or they made the approach in a certain way, then we will always take that person's details and look at it. And the other thing I would say is, don't apply to job adverts. Don't just do that. Go and look for and offer your services to people, because I would say I'm permanently 3 months behind advertising for a role at the point where I really need somebody.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, you know, writing, letting somebody know who you are, you're available, you love their company, and this is why you love their company, and why you think you could do something for them. They are the ones that you keep in your mind, you print out and put on your table. You know, that's the way it really works.
So be proactive.
Be proactive.
But actually, to be fair, I'm going to use your be awake. I like that. Be awake. We are totally out of time, as I knew we would, and I could carry on talking to you for a lot longer. But thank you so much, because some really good advice. There's been a really lovely insight into your career, but actually there is some really good advice to the students that will be watching this, and anybody that's seeking a job at this time. So thank you very much. Hope everybody's enjoyed that, and we will be back with another session very, very soon. Thanks very much, Phil.
Thanks, Ruth. I enjoyed it.